What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Happy Hour Live. Each week we talk about full-time RV living, all those questions, all those thoughts, all those ideas, and sometimes a little mayhem in between. Glad to have you guys along. Let's see who we've got in the house. We've got Miss Lori was first on the ball today. She gets the first nod. Jim Bertrand is in the house. WCRV Adventures, RV Living Life. Karen's New Jersey Journey. Hi, hon. How you doing? Let's see who else we've got out there. X Fired Up is in the house. Glad to have you along. Oh, HC Carefree Highway. I kind of read some of the comments you guys had. You were talking about my old stomping grounds, including the Cowboy Dinner Tree. And I have to tell you, that place is amazing. I love it. We did not get to go out there. Karen was answering that one. And we didn't get to go there because of COVID. It kind of put all of our plans on hold. But hope you guys are staying warm up there. I figure it's still a little chilly up there. It is hot here. We're doing about 80 degrees here, and I've got a light shirt on. The temperature is coming down a little bit, but it's getting time to think about heading north. So let's see who else we got here. RV Living Life. Yep, we got you. Glad to have you guys along. They joined us on the last live last week, so it's good. You know, I really enjoyed that, guys. I think we're going to try to do that the last Sunday of every month. Don't let me forget. We'll just let you come on. We'll put the link out there because it was really fun having that conversation, and I look forward to that. So hopefully we'll have you guys joining right along in the live, and you know, you never know what's going to happen. Richard M is in the house. Glad to have you there. Here, Cosmic Mermaid and Starman. Glad to have you guys along. And I think that's going to wrap it up for right now. Well, I have a question for you. We're going to be talking about. So you have decided. That's it. You bought your new home. You're going on the road. You're going to do it, and you're going to do either full-time or part-time life. And but what about all those nagging questions? I had them, and I'm sure Miss Karen did when we were first taking off. You don't really know until you get out there and start doing it. So we're going to try to answer those questions, and I'm going to take the first one tonight, and I'm going to throw it up there. Let's see if I can find it. So we've come up to the end of the year. So March is kind of the turning point for our Thousand Trails membership. So we kind of use that as our anniversary to kind of look back on the last year. How many days did we boondock? How many days did we stay in parks? And which is it? Which is more expensive? And I know I've answered this question before, but I like to cover this every year whenever we come up on this. Here's the next one. So this is how many boondocking nights we've done during the year. 163 nights, over 200 in the parks this year. And so with our park memberships, and you take in all the costs involved, how much is it per night? And how about boondocking? You know, boondocking is not free. Go out and stay in the park or stay out in the desert. And, you know, everybody thinks, well, it's free. It's out there. Which one is cheaper? You guys answer up. Let me know what you think in the comment section over here to the side. Put a number 1 if you think that staying in the parks is more expensive. Put a number 2 if you think that boondocking is more expensive. And we're going to answer that question here in a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Oh my gosh, what a great week. You know, got to spend a little time with Tom and Lori out in the desert, and Miss Karen came out and joined us. And you know, we kind of got to go over Miss Karen's new rig out there and see it. So I see a couple of votes there. All right, all right. So RV Living Life and Cosmic Mermaid and Starman think that staying in the parks is more expensive. Boondocking is not free, Tom and Lori RV Life says. And I see a lot of number ones. Number ones. Jim Bertrand says number 3. I don't know, Dave. Never did either. So that's a good answer. I like it. I like it. Well, if you were curious or if you had to guess, let me know what you think. Number 1, is it more expensive to stay in the parks, or number 2, is it more expensive to boondock? And it'll be interesting. So. Yeah, Miss Karen, she kind of knows. I'm going to take these glasses off. She said it would be cheating if I answer. Yeah, you kind of know, hon. You've done it enough. 4 years we've got doing this. We're going on 4 years, and still love it, still doing it, and no thoughts of quitting. But um, yeah, unless you don't count the initial cost of TT membership. Yeah, no, don't count the initial cost. Whether you get the the full membership, or in our case, we always did the pass, and we also have the encore. Okay, so there's another thing to factor in. I think the encore is $300 some. So meant to be RVing is in the house. Yeah. If you don't count the membership. So we're gonna count the pass cost. So the big memberships do have an annual cost. I think it's $575. You guys correct me. I don't remember what that is. And then you still have your we do the Encore Thousand Trails Encore Trails Pass, and that one I I forget now if it's 300 or more, 399 maybe. So I based it on what we paid last year, and I'll add in one more cost. I also pay $51 a month to the ranch, and you guys have seen that on the videos when we're up in Oregon. The ranch is really a great deal. We can stay there for 4 months out of the year. We actually stayed there 3 months out of this summer. And then the rest of the time was either boondocking or in the Thousand Trails. But all right. Yeah, let's see what we got here. Yeah, so counting the annual cost of what you pay, all right, plus the encore. And then I pay $51 a month. So what does that come out to? A little over $600 a year that I pay to the ranch. Yeah, our WCRV Adventures depends on what you use to calculate for boondocking. Are you taking into account of cost of solar? No. So let's say that you're already set up, however it is that you're going to be set up. And in our case, we have about 600 watts of solar. We have lots of batteries. We still run the generator about 2.5 hours a day. So that kind of adds up. And again, this is going to be for us. Now, Tom and Lori, they could actually, they're bigger boondockers than we ever were. And they do a lot of it. And I'll tell you what, hanging out with those guys, besides being just amazing to hang out, and they are family, and I love you guys, I never hear their generator running. So I know for them, it would definitely be the boondocking, I think. But I don't know. I with the residential fridge and all the electricity that I generally use, we're generally running about 2.5 hours per day on the generator. So it's a trick question, Dave. Yes and no are both correct. Not well. I'm giving you all the parameters now. I'm giving you all the parameters, but so let's kind of dig into this a little bit. So I kind of thought about this with Miss Karen. If you kind of following Miss Karen, she's picked up her rig. She's about a month into it, and she's doing great. She's finding out, there's a lot of setup involved in setting up a coach and getting it done. But she is out there in the desert with Tom and Lori, and she's actually doing awesome, guys. So hats off to her. She's got a lot of experience, but she's also going to come up against all those things that we're going to talk about today. So, um, so buying you let's assume that you've bought your rig, and it doesn't matter whether it's a class B, class C, all of these things are going to factor into your living, or when you buy, you've already decided what you can handle as far as a towable, or whether it's going to be a motorhome, and whatever length for comfort needs that you guys need. So taking that over, I think the biggest questions are, after that is, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live? Are we going to try to boondock? Are we going to, be in the parks? And there's plus and minuses to both. I think you guys know that we love boondocking. That is just one of our things. We're actually in a park here. Look how empty it is, guys, right there. There are a few people, but it definitely emptier this year. There's just not as many people down here. So, um, yeah, that's kind of already gone into the decision based on how you want to live, where you want to go, if you're going to travel, if you're going to stay put and stay somewhere. All of these things are probably already answered. But if you're traveling, so we're going to kind of go towards traveling, and you may be going park to park. You may be going boondocking, and traveling to those boondocking locations. And I can tell you, most people start off in the parks, and I was one of them. I thought, well, we can boondock for a little bit, but I really feel a little more comfortable in the parks. And I think a lot of people kind of start out that way. Bob and Pearl are in the house. I got to hang out with them this week. They invited us over for dinner. It was amazing. And happy birthday, Pearl, Tom and Lori says. Yeah, it was Pearl's birthday. So happy birthday, Pearl. And awesome time getting together with those guys. It was fantastic. So glad to have you guys in the house. So the things that I hear, the basic questions are, how will it be heated? If you've got whatever RV that you've got, generally is going to have some sort of propane system in it. That is, or maybe Webasto or something like that, depending on the type of rig that you get. And that's going to be handled by both your fuel, whether it's propane, diesel, gas, and your battery power to run the fans to force the air out and get that all out. Aside from that, if you're going to stay in the parks and things like that, space heaters, things like that, all come into effect. And you're able to use some of those things. How will we cook? Cooking is going to happen mostly on propane. Now, if you're set up for the parks, you may elect to do electric and do a hot plate, or maybe you already have electric in your coach, and that's already built in. You've got generally a microwave, and you've got to run that. That kind of brings us to solar, batteries, generator. All right. And I don't like to separate the two, because I get a lot of questions, do we need solar? Well, I don't know. Do you? The biggest question is, where do you plan on living? Where do you plan? Are you going park to park? If you're just going to go park to park, then no, you don't need solar. What I would recommend, though, is a backup generator. Even though you're going to be going park to park, having a backup generator something that can power up your systems for those travel days where you stop at rest areas or, truck stops, places where you need uh, some uh, some power to keep the batteries juiced up and going. Then yeah, you'll probably need some of that. But it's going to be pretty minor if you're going, park to park. Uh, Now, where the solar comes in is if you decide, you know what, I really like boondocking, and I was one of them. I raised my hand. All right. When I first started, I was thinking, park to park, we just need a little bit of solar up just to kind of keep the batteries topped off. Well, then we started boondocking and discovered that we loved it. And at that point, we had to start upgrading the solar. And basically, when we first started, we were about 200 watts of solar. We bumped that up to 400. And then we bumped it up again here recently to 600 to handle residential fridge, the Keurig, cooking on with the electric rather than the gas. It all adds in there, and that was the determining factor for us. Is since we already had the generator, now we need the solar. We need to add on to that, but that's not the end all be all. A lot of people think that solar will just cover it all. It doesn't really, because your generator is what's going to back you up on those days like today. I don't know if you guys can see the clouds. Look at the clouds up there. Not a whole lot of solar coming in. If I was trying to rely on solar alone, I probably wouldn't make it more than a couple days. So um, I had even my son ask me, so Dad, do I need solar? I really liking the solar. I'd really like to get the solar. And I said, get a generator. You need a backup generator. You need a generator to to take up the slack when solar isn't going to work. And I promise you, you can put 1,200 watts of solar up on the roof. When you have days like today, you're going to need that generator to back up those batteries and charge up. So, um, that being said, solar and a generator don't do you a lot of good inside of the coach without, I should say, solar and batteries. And the next one should be batteries. So let's go over that real quick. A lot of these rigs come out with pretty minimal batteries. Let's face it, when we were going camping with the family, we weren't watching TV, we weren't charging laptops, the kids weren't playing on their iPads, and didn't really have to worry about all of that. It was roughing it. And that is kind of days gone by. If you try to apply that to full-time RV living, you're not roughing it anymore. This is your life. This is where you're going to live, and you need to be comfortable. So having enough batteries in the coach to supply power for the entire day and then the entire night, it's probably going to take a little bit more than what most people have in their rigs. And even with mine, I had 4 golf cart batteries. And a little over a year and a half ago, I had to replace those batteries, bump that up to 6 golf cart batteries, and doing pretty good. But I can still see times when it would be nice to have more batteries than that. So you got the solar, you got the batteries, but that isn't what you're going to be living on inside the coach. The next one's going to be, and a lot of coaches don't come, and Miss Karen kind of found this out. A lot of these rigs didn't come with or don't come with inverters. So an inverter is what takes your battery power and turns that into 110 power that we recognize as where we plug our laptop in, where we plug our hair dryer in, where we plug, a cooktop in. And so those rigs rely on the generator or shore power at the RV parks when you're plugged in, to supply the electricity that you need. And when you're out, if you're out boondocking, you need something to convert that power and give you power at those plugs, or maybe a certain set of plugs. And an inverter is going to be the next thing that you're going to need to convert the solar, convert the battery power to power that you can use inside of the coach. So solar is not the end all be all. And I see a lot of people, thinking, well, all I need is a bunch of solar. Well, no, you got batteries. It's a three-part system. You got batteries, solar, and inverter. And that you're going to have to think about all three of those things to upgrade and supply the coach. So a lot of your bigger coaches are going to have the inverters, and that's going to be taken care of. But a lot of your smaller rigs don't. They were set up for camping. Oh my gosh. So how will I cook? We obviously talked about propane. We've got electricity that we can use at the parks. I would recommend a hot plate. Why not use the power? It's going to be cheaper than your propane. But if you're out boondocking, that power is also going to be sucking off your batteries. So you may want to switch over to propane and stay on propane. So WC RV Adventures need an inverter for the countertop ice maker. Yeah, Miss Karen could use one, definitely. Let's see, we got Dale and Sherry are in the house. Hi guys, glad to have you here. Miss Pearl is in the house. Glad to have you here. Happy birthday, by the way. Jim Bertrand says Davy Crockett. Yeah, I use that a lot. And the Davy Crockett does plug in, but it plugs into 12 volts. So I can actually run the Davy Crockett with or without an inverter. I love it. And but that's like basics 102. That's like the next step up, the next level. So where are we going to dump? How much, where are we going to get water? And what are we going to pay for that? Um, you know, Dumping and water is generally pretty easy in the rest of the country except for the Southwest. Interesting that you get down here, you're very likely to pay for water, and you're very likely to pay for dump. That's not to say that there aren't free places out there, and there are a number of sources. I generally use Campendium. It helps me find some of those places, and and sometimes I can do it for free. But for the boondocking side of it, I did factor in about $60 per year for water and dump. And if I can't get it for free, you've got to dump, and you're going to have to pay for it. So. But Campendium is a good source for finding it. There's also rvdumps.com, I think, or .net. I can't remember. And there's a couple of them out there for finding dump sites. And generally, where you find the dump sites, you can find water. And whether they charge or not, now that's going to be different for wherever you're at in the country. How much water are we going to need? Some of these smaller rigs, including Class Bs, are going to have some pretty small tanks. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I have 100 gallons of water on board for two people showering and living semi-normally. Now we're still taking sailor showers and things like that to conserve water, and conserving water wherever we can. You still, two people, 2 weeks is probably about as far as we can go on that 100 gallons. So if you're picking up, a smaller rig with smaller tanks, you have to kind of factor that in. And you generally have to go out and start boondocking, and you start getting a feel for how long that you can go comfortably on what you've got. But yeah, it's at least a couple gallons per person per day. So that's generally a pretty good rule of thumb. All right. So how do I find RV parks? And again, Campendium is a good route to go for finding those. But There are a lot of membership clubs out there too. You've got Thousand Trails, you've got Boondockers Welcome and Harvest Host, and those are all good deals. They work for some people, they don't work for others. And you know, we have typically survived for the last 4 years on Thousand Trails and the ranch membership up in Oregon, and that's the only ones that we have. But there's Passport America, and all of those are going to have discounts on your stays at these different parks, and they work for some, and then other people would say no, they really don't work for me. So your experience may vary, but the Thousand Trails I've really enjoyed. Yeah, but it's not free either. So there is something to be something to be paid for that. I do say that if your primary goal, and let's say that you're going to try this for the first year and see if you like it, I don't believe in the you must commit. I've heard some YouTubers out there say when you go out there and do this, you must commit. Um, I I can tell you that that's not really true. Do you want to give it your best shot? Sure. Do you want to set yourself up for success? Absolutely. All right. But if it makes you feel comfortable, and it did for me, it did for Miss Karen when we left and started this journey 4 years ago, we kind of set that up and said we're coming back in 6 months. And if this does or doesn't work for us, we have a fallback. We can go back to that, and because it won't be for everybody. This is something that is fringe. It is there are about 3 million RVers in the country, and that are out there doing this. And so, that's less than 1% of our population total. So it's not going to be for everybody. So I don't believe in the you must commit, you must sell everything, and leave yourself an out. If that makes you feel comfortable, definitely do that. But um, if you're going to stay at the parks and you're going to be, that's what you've committed to, I say do a membership. Do whether it be Passport America or something. You could decide after a year if that doesn't work for you. And if you don't do the big membership, um, I can tell you from my own personal that even though I love boondocking, I love getting into the hot tub, I love going to the pools, I love the resorts, and I need that sometimes to kind of decompress, recharge, and get ready for going out the next time that I go out. So having that option to kind of do that, it that is a for me, that is a must. That is something that I really need. Now, your mileage may vary. You may say, no, I'm okay with that. So Doug D is in the house. How you doing? Um, so the let's just go back to our original question. All right. So our original question was, and we'll throw it up there. So this is what I did for the past year. Miss Karen and I did this. 202 nights in RV parks. All right. And we had 163 nights boondocking. All right. Um, so put in the comments there. Is it cheaper? Is it cheaper to do the boondocking? That's number two. Put a number two in the slot. Or is it cheaper to do the RV parks? All right. At 202 nights. And I'll give you that answer here in just a second. So I think a lot of people thought the RV parks, and I think that was a general consensus. So WCRV Adventure says, was your dollars for dump and water so low because you use dumps at the campgrounds? Yeah, to dump at the campgrounds is going to be cheaper because obviously you're already there. So really, there's a lot of rest areas. There's a lot of options around the country for dumping and taking on water for free. And so traveling, really the hardest part to do dump and water without paying is the Southwest, and especially quartzite. Um, so most of that, I did factor in $60 for quartzite because, um, I spent, 3 months there, and you're not going to get water and dump there in quartzite for free. It's going to cost you one way or the other. So. All right. So there's Our Life Scott and Laura. Glad to have you guys here. Our Life Journey 2, they say. All right. Boondocking. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and answer that. RV parks at 1 year for 202 nights. Broken down for what we had. All right. Let's see if we can throw it up there. There it is. $5.44 a night. That's with the 1,000 trails and the ranch membership. We're at $5.44 per night. All right. Boondocking, 163 nights. All right. Stand by. Hold on to your hats. $8.86 a night, guys. That's what I essentially paid for last year. That's running 2.5 hours per day of generator use. And I'm rounding up these figures because I factored in fuel at $2.50 a gallon. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But yeah, no, boondocking is not free. And actually, this is the 4th year in a row now that boondocking has been more expensive by a few dollars a night than staying in the parks. So there you go. So I always like doing that once a year just to kind of, what did we have? How many times were we in the parks? And how many days were we boondocking? I love my boondocking, but anytime that you hear somebody say that boondocking is free, it is not free. And you have to factor in propane, dump, water, and that cost is actually attributed to the boondocking. I didn't put that over onto the parks because obviously staying at the parks, dumping is free. So there you go. Yeah, Scott and Laura is surprising. Yeah, yeah. So uh, the next one on getting started is setting a budget. That is a bad one, especially for me. I did not, Miss Karen and I, we just kind of hit the road and we were footloose and fancy free. We just went for it, and I wish that we probably would have got through the first year and set a budget a little bit, because we kind of ate up our emergency fund, so to speak, wanting to be here, wanting to be there, wanting to go do this, go do that. And it was a blast. It was amazing. But I can tell you now, at 4 years, setting a budget and sticking to that budget is really important. So Jim Bertrand says, sounds like a balance of both is a good choice. Yeah, it really is. Depending, some people don't want to boondock. And we definitely could have stayed in the parks pretty solid throughout the year and brought that over 300 days a year. And that would have brought our park costs down even further. I think the first and second year we were down below, I think we were below 5. I think it was 472 or something like that last year. So yeah, it depends on how long. Now this year COVID hit us, so we were out of the parks for about 3 months. I think that also was our record for how many days boondocking we ended up doing. I think and Miss Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was about 90 days before getting back into another park once they all started shutting down for COVID. So, yeah, kicking back. John says, "How was getting into the parks during the COVID?" Yeah, every it was a little. Everybody was locked down, and we left Sedona, Cottonwood, Thousand Trails, March 19th, and we were not able to get back into a park. And I don't remember what the date was, but I think it was more than 90 days later. Um, the Thousand Trails had kind of shut down, and weren't taking. They were allowing everybody to stay put who was there, but they were not taking anybody in. So if you were out, you were out, and you're going to have to wait until they reopen the parks. So that was Cottonwood, Arizona. It was Bend, Oregon by the time we got back to our home base there, before we were actually able to get back into a park, and have had no problems ever since then. So yeah, Karen's New Journey says that's about right. Yeah, it was. It was a long run. That was a long run. Um, our life journey, Scott and Lori, they say they love budgets. Yeah, you know what? I recommend it right up front, and start that and try to stick with that. So, one of the reasons we had the emergency fund was, in case there's some sort of life emergency or something going on, and we'd be able to handle it, whatever the case may be, whether it was repairs on the coach, whether there was an emergency at that time. Sadly, Karen's dad died, and she had to fly back to Oregon, and you have to have that emergency fund there to get her back there, and for her to be back there. And and then there was, we had starters on the coach, tires, oil, all. Thankfully nothing major, guys. I'm knocking on wood. All right, nothing major. But having that emergency fund in the bank is kind of important. So, uh, which brings us to the next one is repairs and maintenance. Make sure that you allow a certain amount for repairs and maintenance every month, and bank it, put it away. That's essentially what I'm doing now. Is each month I have so much money coming in, I throw a certain percentage in the bank, and that's meant for anything that comes up that's above and beyond what's normally in the budget. And that's, right now it is just totally emergency stuff. So there's not going to be any Disneyland trips or anything like that, and that's important. That's important. So, um, can you work on your own rig? Guys, my microwave went out yesterday. All right. Now I am not an appliance technician, but I play one on TV. So guess what I'm going to be repairing over the next week, and we'll touch bases. Hopefully, I'll have it done by the next live next Sunday, but we will see if I can get that microwave fixed. But it started making a god awful buzzing noise, and yeah, it's not heating. It's not heating anything in the microwave portion. So. HC Carefree Highway says, did Tom calculate Dave into his budget? Yeah, Tom was mentioning he needed a Dave in his toolbox, and I'm sorry, Tom, I already have a home, but I'm happy to help whenever I get around there. Jim Bertrand says starters, hydraulics, tires, transmissions, cooling systems, engines, they don't last forever, and they are all costly. Yeah, they absolutely are. Absolutely are. I can tell you though, living in a sticks and bricks at a house is really no different. You're still going to have exterior painting. You're still going to have roof. You're still going to have all of your appliances inside of your house. No different than it is here. You still have to take care of your landscape, your lawn mowers, your cars. It kind of goes on. So, um, it's just different. It's different, but you still have a lot of maintenance things to consider along the way. Um, so internet and phone. All right. That is the next biggie that comes up when you're starting this. And if you don't have that figured out, even if maybe you don't do the internet, you don't do Facebook. I don't know how you're watching me right now, but most of us are doing Wi-Fi at the very least, and we're doing uh, hotspots or some sort of cellular internet connection. And that's how I'm coming to you guys tonight. And that is going to be, that is going to be a budget item that you're going to have to factor in. So no longer is it now. Maybe I had this fantasy in my mind when I first started. Oh, I can live on park Wi-Fi. We can just go Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi. It'll be okay. And I can tell you that I never connect to the Wi-Fi anymore at the parks. Very rarely. Sometimes I'll connect just to test and see what the speed is. Once in a while, I'm surprised, but mostly it's park Wi-Fi is enough to check your email and do basic things. You're not going to really do a lot of surfing on the internet, including watching this video right here. So, whoa, Nelly is in the house. Hello, how you doing? Uh, so yeah, you got to factor that in, and depending on which way you go, between phone and an internet connection, a data connection, that's going to be anywhere from $100 to $200 generally, and sometimes more if you're working and need that. So you're going to need multiple sources, including T-Mobile, Verizon. So not only can you can't just do one and hope that's going to carry you, because some areas won't have Verizon. I have T-Mobile and AT&T. They've covered me fairly well, but they're not the end all be all. And every now and then we are left without an internet connection. So sometimes even a third is not going to be a bad idea, but that gets expensive. That gets expensive. Next exit says health insurance seems to be the biggest factor stopping most folks from starting their RV lifestyle before Medicare. We had to wait as well. Yeah, having health care, health insurance is a huge budget item, and that is something that you need to factor that in as well. There's also RV insurance. When you're out camping and you're using your RV 2 weeks a year, you're paying for insurance on your coach. Well, that's different than when you go full time. You really need to have a full timer's RV insurance, and that's more expensive. It's not much, but it is more expensive. It's something that you also have to factor in. So let's see if so RV Living Life says, if I stay, that's Gary and Carol. Glad to have you guys along. If I stayed in Canada, my health care would be free. But to travel to the U.S. for 6 months, it will cost me about $2,500 per year. Okay. So, that actually, I don't think that is too bad. I hear people having to pay a lot more. So that is something that is something to consider. So, yeah, I am fortunate in the fact that VA healthcare, I am part of the VA system and they cover my healthcare for me. And I've been with them for a number of years. I am rarely ever sick, though. I'm rarely ever have a problem, but it has happened. And I think I was in Phoenix about a year ago, and you guys saw me on video here saying, I'm miserable, guys. And I was going to the emergency room, and it happened. So you got to have that some sort of medical backup for you to cover you. Right. Um, So yeah, and that was the next one. So Bob, right on time with that medical question, because that was the next one on my list, was the medical. So we covered that one. So the next one's going to be security. And if you're staying in the parks, generally your security is going to depend on the park that you're at. You know, crime is not non-existent in the parks. It's never a guaranteed. And even Scott and Shauna from Jan's Road Tripping, they were in a park not too far from here, had a solar panel stolen off the roof, and so it does happen. But when you're out boondocking, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you have to consider your security out there as well. And you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be a firearm. It can be, whatever security methods that you choose, whether it's cellular or, but you have to have kind of a plan. um, and that is going to include an emergency plan. So, what happens if? And when you're out boondocking, you need to know where to call for the police, because 911 isn't going to do it. All right, 911, you may get someplace, and they may be able to patch you through if they can determine where you're at. Um, but 911, dialing 911 on cellular is not the general plan. When you're out boondocking and you're going state to state and traveling, you really need to write down the emergency phone numbers, and keep track of that. So if there is an emergency, you can call them directly. And that generally you'll go right through to their dispatch. So that's generally where the emergency numbers go to. But 911, typically, keep that in mind, is not going to get you directly there most times. So um, also, where is the nearest hospital? And if you're not familiar with GPS on your phone, putting that in there and having that information is just good to have, especially if you're active, you're doing a lot of hiking, or like we do the motorcycle riding, and having that knowledge to be able to get someplace for an emergency right away. That is important stuff to write down and keep track. And I think Tom and Lori had a sheet, and they write all of that stuff down everywhere when they stop and they're staying someplace. That is really a good plan. So, yeah, definitely keep that in mind. um, Navigation. So, how do you find all of this stuff? And obviously, we're all so used to our smartphones now. We can typically type in anything we want, and we can generally find what's all around us. But very few people, if you're living in sticks and bricks or you haven't been out on the road yet, you don't realize that you live by that GPS. So every time that you want to get to go someplace, every time that you need to find someplace, you're going to need to pull that up on your phone, and get used to using that. And I remember before going full time, one of the things that I did to kind of practice with that is I went for about a week, and I would only Yelp it or Google it. I knew where I was going because I'd lived there for 35 years, but I wanted to see how the GPS was going to work. Was it going to get me there? And yes, it usually did, but not the direction that I would have gone. Since being a local, I know where everything is. um, but when you're in these strange towns, you're in strange places. Yeah, you kind of need that GPS to get you around. So get used to using that navigation. It is important, because that's how you're going to find your fuel. That's going to how you're going to find your grocery stores and even the hospital if you're trying to get there. So, um, in addition to navigation, the other thing that you should know on whatever rig that you got, unless it's a smaller rig and you don't really need, you're not too worried about it. Most of these rigs weigh a lot. And there will be times, even if you're not very tall, you'll come up on a bridge or something like that, and it will give the weight limits on the side of the bridge on a sign. Knowing what your weight limit is or what your weight is on your coach is really important before you start crossing bridges and going to these different boondocking locations, because some of these bridges aren't made to take more than 10,000 pounds. And I promise you, just a travel trailer and a pickup truck, you're pushing pretty close to that. So knowing your height and your weight on your rigs and your length, if you have a really long rig, is kind of important. And I have it kind of committed to memory. But if you're not quite sure, or you're not sure you can remember it, write it down and tape it to the dash right there, someplace as close to your speedometer where you can see it, just so that it kind of embeds in your mind and you remember that. There have been a couple of occasions where we had to stop in the middle of the road for a bridge that was rated for, I don't know what, I think it was like 16,000 pounds. And I thought, well, we can't go across there. And we even had a local that came by while we were sitting there debating what to do. And the local said, oh, RVs go across this all the time. Folks, that's a 16,000 pound weight limit on that bridge. I weigh, just the coach alone, 32,000 pounds. The truck is an additional 7,000 pounds. So we are uh, we are about 55 feet of 40,000 pounds. And there's no way that we can go across, even though a local stopped and said, oh, you should be okay. If I didn't know that, I probably would have ventured across that bridge. And that could have had a real bad outcome. So definitely know your height, know your weight, and use that to your advantage. Um, Next exit says, other than spousal abuse, when would you call 911? Too late for RV, fire, patio, furniture theft? Just kidding, don't laugh. But never seen any safety concern in parks so far. Yeah, I haven't seen a safety concern. I have to agree with you. Um, just there is crime, there is theft, and it typically has been in the parks. I've never seen theft out boondocking, where you would think a lot of people kind of jump to the conclusion, oh, when you're out boondocking, you're out there by yourself, and anybody could pull up and steal something or do something. Well, guys, thieves are lazy. They don't want to go through that much work. They do not want to drive that far to go out into the middle of the desert and find you and then steal something from you. So typically it's going to happen at campgrounds, or it's going to happen at RV parks. So um, well, now I can read your questions. I wanted to see if I could get down that list. If you, I know RV Living Life, you guys have to be close. You're getting ready to go full timing. If you guys have questions, throw it on out there. I know Miss Karen she has been finding out a lot about her rig and trying to adapt it and make it her own. I think she was talking earlier, and she had been restringing blinds. Good for you. Doing her own maintenance and the things that she can do to make that better. So it's a super cute rig, guys, and hopefully you're going to do a video on that and show everybody, take them on a tour, and so everybody can see your rig. But WCRV Adventure says, so theft, but not personal safety concerns. That is comforting. Yeah, really don't see a lot of personal safety. Everybody, when it comes to quartzite, even out boondocking, wherever, even in the parks here, everybody is kind of watching out for everybody else. I know I am. If there was somebody walking around that didn't look like they would belong, I'm keeping an eye on them. I'm going to see. It doesn't happen. It rarely happens. But that even happens out boondocking. out in the desert. You know, even though everybody may not know each other and they may be 200 yards apart, if somebody is acting suspicious, I promise you, out there driving around, there's people watching him, and that should be comforting to most because, yeah, that's going to keep the thieves away. So, um, I kind of love that part about it. Everybody's just kind of watching out for everybody else. But oh, Miss Karen's New Journey says she's gonna have a video soon. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. But yeah, you know, I have been fortunate. Knock again on wood. Um, Miss Karen and I traveled around for 4 years, and we never had any issues with theft or property crime of any kind, and really never saw any, you know, safety issue, um, you know, in the parks, boondocking, things like that. So it's a, you know, I hope that everybody will be free of that and be as lucky as we have been. I consider ourselves, we've been fortunate. We've been fortunate. RV Living Life says, only thing we don't have is solar and maybe a Davy Crockett. I recommend the Davy Crockett. I only recommend the solar if you think you're going to like the solar. And so, you know, before you make that investment in solar, because it is spendy, any way that you do it, whether you do it yourself or you pay somebody to do it, go out and boondock. Go out and see if you like it, because that's where it really comes in. Is when you're going to be out boondocking. So some people don't have an interest in boondocking. So um, oh, nice, Lori, Tom and Lori RV Life. That's Miss Lori right there. She says we always take pictures and video of anyone suspicious just so we have documentation in case anything happens. That's why you guys have so much video of me. Wow, I just thought you liked me, so you were taking video of me. You know. Solar is much cheaper today than 2 or 3 years ago from Jim Bertrand. It really is. Jim, I just added on 200 watts of solar from Lowe's, no less, and I got it at 72 cents a watt. So, um, Pearl says, great idea, Lori. Yeah, that actually is. Just snapping a picture or a little video right on your phone, just so that you've got that. I like that idea a lot, actually. Expired up says no rig yet, but do have the Davy Crockett and use it at least once a week. Now there's somebody who has their priorities in order. I like it. I I love my Davy Crockett, and I'll tell you what, I think I had the Coach before I had my Davy Crockett, but after having the Davy Crockett, I wish I would have had it first. So, RV Living Life says we camped our whole life together. We should be okay. Having a sleep number bed is a huge leap from sleeping on the ground. Amen to that. Yeah, if that brings up another interesting point. If you have picked up a new RV and it still has the RV mattress in it, that is the number one thing that I always tell people is get ready to replace that mattress because they're they are always awful. Karen's New Jersey Journey says very suspicious there, Dave. Yeah, I know. That's why Lori has all of those videos of me. So uh God, I mean, that's how fast that day went. We covered everything, guys, but that is gonna wrap up our night tonight. We got about 30 seconds left. I always look forward to seeing you guys and hanging out with you for this hour every Sunday. If you're new to the channel, you know, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell next to it. That'll notify you anytime we put up a video or we go live right here. But you can always find me right here, Sunday, 6 o'clock I enjoy having you guys. It is the highlight of my week. I always tell everybody that, and really glad to have you guys here. Thank you so much for coming along, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Live life full time. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.